Good morning, friends, and welcome to a Hasty Podcast. I'm your expired turkey, Weston Hasty, and you're listening to a Hasty Podcast, the podcast where I claim to, I claim to upload daily episodes and then routinely and regularly skip days on end not uploading podcast episodes. Welcome to my little show. It is a little show. That's why I can get away with this kind of thing. No one's coming after me, hounding me down like, where's episode 15, 16, 13, 12, 97? What episode is this? I don't even know. I don't have a clue. Welcome to the Thanksgiving episode, everybody. Yes, Thanksgiving is at this point, by the time you're hearing this, long over. But some of you, myself included, am still eating leftover Thanksgiving turkey. So I think it still counts. I think it still counts within the realm of Thanksgiving and the Thanksgiving festive holiday. Oh, man, I meant to have a Thanksgiving episode out on Thanksgiving. Look. I mean to have an episode out every day. Right? I mean to have one out every day. It doesn't always happen. And it's one of those things where, as it is with any hobby or any, I don't know, all I can think of is hobbies, any kind of routine you might be trying to create for yourself where you want to do a thing every X amount of time, whether it is daily or every week or whatever the case might be, whatever thing you're doing that is a routine thing you're trying to do, the moment you take like one day off or 1 week off, it turns into the 2 days or 2 weeks or whatever your sort of routine is. It's very easy to do that, and that's what we did. That's what I did. I say we, but it was all me. This is the Thanksgiving episode, yes, where we talk about kind of a little bit of nostalgia. I just realized that I wanted to pull up my Twitter. I want to pull up my Twitter real quick because I had an interesting little tweet from Alex. I'm pulling up my Twitter. Sorry, I'm distracted. Using the hashtag Hasty Podcast, you can all use it and grab my attention, right? Maybe. We were talking about, in one of the episodes, nostalgia gaming, just a little bit. Just the nostalgia that I had playing some Black Ops with the buds and that kind of thing, where that was kind of like just a memory that I had from long ago or whatever I was talking about in that episode. And we had this exchange here. Alex mentioned some notable memories he had playing the SNES and the PS1, or specifically, here's actually what's interesting, right? He mentioned they had many memories of watching his cousins play SNES and PS1 and N64 games, and that is how he, growing up as a young ladlet, learned to love video games by starting out watching other people play games, specifically like Ocarina in Time and that kind of thing. And I thought that was interesting because my experience is not like that, and I suppose maybe my experience might be unique to other people's, and in that I don't have that memory of watching other people play games and getting started. And we thought that was interesting. In my tweet, I responded, I've never been able to replicate in my adult life my mind being blown by a video game as a child. As a child, games are brand new, and this unique experience, unlike any that you can get in real life, so it's mind-blowing. I continue. I don't even remember getting into games. I didn't have any friends that I remember watching play games. Video games have just been there for me for as long as I can remember. And apparently that's not necessarily normal. I don't know. And I would like to hear from some of the rest of you if that is normal or not for you. If you want to hit me up on Twitter or anywhere that you can leave a comment. Yeah, my experience as a firstborn child, I suppose I would imagine that my younger brother would have a different story. Maybe he has some memories of watching me play games. I don't know. I don't know if that's the case or not. And ironically for me, as someone who actually plays games on YouTube and people watch me play games, me growing up as a child, I didn't have anyone to watch. I didn't watch other people play games. As far back as I can remember, games have just kind of been there. I don't actually remember my parents buying me my first set of games. I don't even remember for sure if I started playing PC games first or console games first, because in my mind, I'm the same age. I'm still the teeny tiny, I don't know, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, whatever. I don't know how far back my memory goes. My memory is atrocious, by the way. But as far back as I can remember, I had a handful of PC games that I loved to play, and I had a handful of console games on the PlayStation 1 that I loved to play, but I don't actually remember getting those first games. They were just always there, which I found very interesting to reflect on since our little Twitter conversation, that I have these just spotty holes in memory about where my video gaming started. I didn't grow up around friends. I grew up in a very small village. This is true. I grew up in a village. I love telling it. It is a legal village. Its legal designation is a village. And it had, back when in the heyday during my lifetime, I think it had as much as 100 people in and around it. In town proper, I don't remember how many people we had, but the population also counted quite a few people outside of the village, kind of out in the country. So I'm not entirely sure how many were in the village proper, but I think at its peak in my lifetime, it was up to 100, and I think it's quite a bit less now as people come and go and that kind of thing. But I didn't have a lot of people my age around me. There were a few that were close-ish in age, but most of which were younger than me, and I didn't really relate to. And those that were closer to my age, we didn't, play games together. Video gaming was not the thread that bound us. It was, in fact, I was more of an inside kid. I didn't really go out and meet with those other kids around the village. I mostly stayed to myself. I liked playing, in the yard, doing imaginary stuff with myself or whatever. We had a trampoline later in life. I like jumping around on it, running around, or if I was staying inside playing my video games that I just feel like I've always had. The games that I always had on PC, the ones that come to mind when I think PC gaming, this is what I grew up with, are the Humongous Games Entertainment, or Humongous Entertainment, Humongous, the guys that did the backyard sports games and Pajama Sam and Freddy Fish and Putt Putt and Spy Fox. Those games. You might be familiar with them if you're someone who's somewhere around my age and remember gaming back then, because those games were for kids and I was a kid, and that was what I played. They were point-and-click adventure games, except for the backyard games. They were like sports games, but a little lighter on the action as well. No, I'm thinking backyard baseball was a little on the lighter side in terms of action. It was just kind of clicking around and that kind of thing. But there was a backyard basketball and hockey and soccer, and they were a little bit more fast-paced. I loved playing those games. The Humongous Entertainment, I don't know what they're called. Humongous Entertainment or Humongous Games, maybe both. I don't even know. You can Google it. It's out there. It exists. Loved those games. As well as, when I think PC gaming, I think Roller Coaster Tycoon and SimCity. I forget which SimCity it was. It might have been SimCity 2000. I do think that the Roller Coaster Tycoon and SimCity came a little bit after my experiences with Humongous Entertainment, but they're still there in my earliest memories where I do remember them. It's a little nebulous when I try to look back. And I especially remember them because I remember my dad was super into Roller Coaster Tycoon as well. So while I maybe wasn't playing a lot of video games with friends, I could relate to my dad. We could talk about Roller Coaster Tycoon and our strategies for increasing our park's popularity or rating or whatever it was called, and the attendance. And we could laugh over how everybody was constantly vomiting in our parks, and that we had to literally pick up handymen and drop them on vomit and to get it all cleaned up. We spent a lot of time looking for litter in our parks. I don't know why. That was just something that we spent a lot of time doing. But we spent a lot of time talking about Roller Coaster Tycoon and bonding over Roller Coaster Tycoon. And that's a game that I have a special fond memories with, especially the first game. I know a lot of people talk a lot of good stuff about the second game and the third game that goes 3D, but For me, it's always going to be the first base game, as well as the Corkscrew Follies expansion pack. There was a second expansion pack. I don't remember what it was called. We never got that as a kid. I actually own it now because I think they're all on Steam. So I own them now because I had to. I had to have them. The original CDs that I used to own for those games, I don't know where they are. I think we still own them. I'm sure they're still in a box somewhere with my family, but we probably have nothing that can actually play them anymore. I know for a fact my PC doesn't have a disk drive, so like I couldn't even try. I doubt it could read it, but I can't even try. But yeah, Roller Coaster Tycoon. Now that's my PC games as I remember them. Console games for me have always been, as far back as I can remember, the earliest games I can remember are the Spyro trilogy. Spyro the Dragon, Spyro Ripto's Rage, Gateway to Glimmer to anyone who's not in the States, and Spyro Year of the Dragon. Those are my earliest, most fondest memories are of specifically Spyro. There were other games as well, but I'm always going to go to Spyro. There was a handful of other military games that I can't remember the names of on the PlayStation 1. I think maybe there was a SOCOM one. There was the Army Men Green Soldiers, the little plastic green soldiers one. I don't remember what all of those were called, interestingly enough, but I really did like some early PlayStation 1 shooters, and I wish I could remember the names of them because I spent a lot of time. There was one that was like a top-down strategy shooter military game on the PlayStation 1, and I that might have been the SOCOM one. You were like a special unit. You were like a special forces unit, and you were sent into like jungles and stuff to perform these covert tasks. But it was just really interesting because it was top down, and if you try to use a sniper and you like try to aim, it would move the entire camera forward. It was like the weirdest experience. One of my I don't know why I remember this, but one of my fond memories of that game is slowly sifting through a minefield to try to find every single mine in this minefield. You didn't have to. You could just cut a path through the minefield and move on with your life. And I'm like, no, I'm going to find and disarm every mine in this minefield. And I did it. It took me like an hour. It took it took so long to do that. But it's just weird that I don't remember the names of those games. And I'm guessing it's because they were, called things that didn't really stick in my tiny child brain, like SOCOM. What does SOCOM mean to a 5-year-old, right? What does that, right? The Army Men Green Soldiers, whatever that was called, that one sticks in my head a little bit better because it was a little bit more cartoony. But of course, in terms besides those, in terms of my most fond memories, it's going to be Spyro the Dragon series. That was so good. Introducing me to 3D platformers, which was quite a departure from what I was used to being able to do on PC. Now, again, I don't actually know which came first, whether I was really fascinated with the games on PC that I did because they were point and click or tycoon games. Oh, Zoo Tycoon on PC was so good too. Zoo Tycoon, I forgot about that for a moment. How dare I? But I don't know which came first. The 3D platforming I was a big fan of on the PlayStation 1. There was a number of other games that I don't remember anymore. They're just lost to my memory, unfortunately. I do remember this one sort of RPG. I feel like it was probably originally natively in Japanese because I think I remember the English being weird in it. But as a kid, I just accepted it, right? But playing it again in the future throughout my life, because I would return to this game again and again, even beyond being a kid, into my teens and a couple times as an adult. The English is weird, so I don't know what it's natively in, probably Japanese. But to call it a JRPG, I think would be misleading, because when you hear JRPG, I think the idea that you get in your head is probably very different. You're probably thinking like something Final Fantasy-esque. This was more like a board game-based RPG that was centered around you diving into these dungeons to collect these relics. It's set in a not quite post-apocalyptic, but kind of in a near future, sci-fi future, where a lot of cities around Earth, or even a lot of Earth's original sort of habitation zones or whatever have been decimated or completely destroyed by errant machines and mutant animals and that kind of thing. So you're kind of living in this post-apocalypse, but humanity isn't like on the brink in this story. It's just very much that you're diving into these dungeons and these ancient ruins of not ancient mankind, but near past mankind, to acquire these relics that were left behind that are guarded by monsters and other hunters. The game was called Battle Hunter. I didn't mention that, called Battle Hunter. I was a big fan of this game. And the gameplay is diving into a dungeon, and it's a board game where instead of rolling dice, you draw cards, and combat is done with cards. And all your traps and stuff are all cards, and you collect relics and you try to get out of the dungeon. There are main story missions that if you fail, it's literally game over. You lose all of your progress to wherever you last saved. There's no auto-saving, there's no checkpoints. If you forgot to save, if you started a new game and never saved once, like in a couple hour session, and you lose a main story mission, your game is gone. Weird design choice, that one. But if you're playing one of the side missions, you don't have to get the main item. You can still go in and collect any relics and come out and still make a profit, and you make some money. And you use your money to level up and heal yourself and that kind of thing. Really good game, in my opinion. It's probably boring as all heck by today's gaming standards. It's not all that interesting as far as board games go that I've seen made today. Like games like Armello or something like that. So much better. Gaming is so much better now. But at the time, it was so unique from anything that I had ever experienced. And the whole board game aesthetic, which you could play multiplayer if you had more than one controller. My brother and I would play it 2-player, and we could both be in a dungeon. You could play it multiplayer. You couldn't do any of the story missions together because of the way those worked, but you could at least do the game part together. It was always fun if you ran out of cards in the deck and you couldn't draw any more cards, then this final big bad boss monster would come out and wreck your guys' butts. So you had to all try to escape. You could not fight this thing. I feel like it's possible to kill it, but I've never seen it done. It will wreck you. You can sometimes it'll one-shot you, but sometimes you can survive a round or two with it, but you need to book it for the escape, and it was always a very tense game. Coffee break! Sorry for the interruption, but I would like to tell you about today's sponsor, Anchor. What's Anchor, you ask? Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. So easy, in fact, that yours truly uses it. Anchor is free and easy to use. You can record and edit your entire podcast from your phone on Anchor's app or on your computer on Anchor.fm. What's more, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so that it is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and several other platforms. And once your podcast is up and running, you can begin making money from your podcast using Anchor's tools with no minimum listenership required. It's everything you need to make your podcast right now. Want to begin? Start by downloading the free Anchor app or go to Anchor.fm to get started. Okay, coffee break over. But as I was saying, that's all very much always been in my mind. I don't remember getting Spyro. I don't remember getting Battle Hunter. I don't remember getting Pajama Sam. I don't remember getting Roller Coaster Tycoon. I don't know where those games came from. I think my dad was a bit of a gamer himself. I'm a little unfamiliar. I think he used to own at one point in time like some Amiga system or something. I'm not entirely sure what he owned. Some ancient, long forgotten console that your boy Weston doesn't remember what it was. His dad said he had. I could easily ask him, but I have not asked him for this episode, so I'm not going to bother. But something. So I think he was a bit of a light gamer himself, and when it came time, I think at some point he thought he would get me a system as well as my brother, who would have been younger than me at the time. But yeah, I think we got systems at one point in time, and that's all I remember, right? I don't remember picking up gaming. I suppose maybe I was coaxed into it by my dad at some point, maybe, right? Like, oh, you should try this. It's funny. I don't remember those initial waves of encouragement to get into it. It's just always been a part of my life. Now, I do bring up this sort of nostalgia trip on Thanksgiving for a reason. I do have some fond memories of playing video games during Thanksgiving with my family. We used to have these really big family get-togethers at my parents' house because we had a good deal of space for it. We lived in this old farmhouse that had been expanded at one point in time, not while we were there, although my dad did some work on the house, as well as we had a huge garage. We had a freaking like airplane hangar for a garage. Our garage was as big as our entire house. It wasn't attached. It was down, like we had like a half a block in this village. It wasn't a huge block or anything like that. I don't know in acreage how big our plot of land was, but it was all right. It was like the quarter, half acre. What I don't even know what an acre is, but it was a good deal of land there in the middle of a village where, no one wanted to live. So you could, anyway, we had a big garage, but we had a lot of space in our expanded sort of farmhouse that we lived in. So we had Thanksgivings over at our place, and we'd have family over. I don't even remember all who showed up. There's a few people I can for sure remember. Definitely my grandparents, obviously, aunts, uncles, cousins, that kind of thing. It's kind of wild to think about how many people showed up to our Thanksgivings back then, because these days, especially with 2020 Thanksgiving with COVID and everything, was just my brother and I and my parents. It was a very small thing. But even without COVID, these days my family is spread out all over the place, and it's travel's very hard for everybody. And our Thanksgivings have been, in the last several years, significantly smaller affairs. But back then, as a kid, there were so many more people involved. And it's just funny thinking back, being, 6 or 7 or 5 or 3 or 9 or whatever I was. I don't even remember. Age just means nothing to my memories. Playing on the PlayStation, and the thing that kills me the most, the thing that I remember the most, I feel like, is just playing some game on the PlayStation. Like it would be like Spyro, right? I'd be like playing Spyro, and my grandpa Carol would do the thing where he'd plop down on the sofa. So, are you winning? It's that "Are you winning" meme. Are you winning, son meme? Except it was my grandpa, and instead of leaving the room, he would continue to sit there looking at the screen, having no idea what was going on the screen. What he really liked to watch, I wasn't so much into sports games. My brother was, though, and especially once we got to the PlayStation 2, we had a lot more... we just had a lot more games, I feel like, on the PlayStation 2, I think. The PlayStation 2 had a longer lifespan, so it lasted longer for sure. But even between the PlayStation 1, between the PlayStation 2, between the two, we had a variety of games, sports games, action games, platformer games, that kind of thing. But I don't remember which system we were on, and I don't remember which game he was playing, but it was some football game, I'm sure of it. And my grandpa loved watching football. And I have these memories of when we weren't playing games. I would always have these memories of he'd be watching TV, and on screen they would have those like yellow lines for like the line of help me out, brain. Line of scrimmage, is that what it is in football? It's been a long time. I don't watch a lot of football. I know the rules pretty good. Sometimes I screw up the terminology. You have to forgive me. But the lines where you start the action at, and the colored in line where you have to get to, like if it's 10 yards away for the first down or 4 yards or whatever the case might be, they highlight that on the TV screen. You know what I'm talking about, right? My grandpa would routinely ask, so they can't see that, right? Referring to the players, like they can't see those lines. Like there aren't literally people running out onto the field painting those lines for people to see. It's like, no, Grandpa, they can't see that. We can see that. They're doing it on the TV. It's not real. So keeping that in mind, remembering that watching TV, he couldn't keep up with the fancy effects that they would put on the televised version of a football game. Now imagine him watching my brother play some football video game with all of the UI, all of the information, the weird camera angles. Imagine that now, right? And just imagine my poor confused grandpa just, I don't understand how you know what's even happening on that screen. And he would just stare at the screen having no idea what was going on. And it's just like, it's just a fond memory of mine. Just that sort of confusion. I think he enjoyed it anyway. He liked being around everybody, even though he had just no idea. That's one of my fond memories. It's goofy. I don't remember anyone else having a lot of interest watching us play video games, but we would do it in the sort of main living room sitting area. We would play, my brother and I might play some video games before the Thanksgiving football game, the real one, not the video game one, the real one would come on, or something would come on that people wanted to watch. Once some program was on that people wanted to watch, we'd have to pause or stop playing the game and switch over to regular TV for everybody. I don't remember anyone else taking that much interest in our video games. It was just my grandpa, the one that had no idea what was going on the screen. Loved it. And those were different times, man. And once the video game stopped and the TV went on, people would be watching whatever they were watching. My brother and I and any of our cousins would go try to do something else. We weren't super interested in watching TV, so I don't even remember what they were watching. I'm sure it was like the Thanksgiving parade and whatever, the dog show maybe. I don't know. I don't even know what they watched, but absolutely there was always a football game on. But we would go and start playing some kind of board game. The old folks would always start up eventually. This was usually after the Thanksgiving dinner, which was lunch. There would always at least be Yahtzee. The old folks would start up Yahtzee, and we'd join in playing that as well. My family was a very big Yahtzee family. We would play Yahtzee for hours. It's ridiculous. Or maybe sometimes we'd play Yahtzee for a little bit, and then we'd switch over to Uno. Big Uno family as well. Yahtzee and Uno, those were the two. Those were the two games. I think there were a couple other card games that some of the folks would play that as a kid I didn't know the rules, so I don't remember what they were playing. If it was like euchre or something, I don't remember what they were playing as a kid, but it was just kind of like those poker-ish gambling type games that as a little kid I didn't understand at the time. But Uno and Yahtzee were big games. Or sometimes we'd, especially with the kids, get together and play Clue, or we would play Life, or we'd play... I remember trying to learn the rules. My brother, me, and one of my cousins, I think it was just the three of us, we were trying to learn the rules to how to play Risk, and we didn't really know what we were doing, but we had the board game out and all the tiny little pieces, and we played some version of Risk that I'm sure was absolutely wrong. My cousin was older than us. I think she knew the rules much better than we did, but and I'm sure she won. I'm sure she won that game because the rest of us were like, what? You know how that goes. You know, kids making up rules to games. I remember arguing over the rules of Clue once because I thought the game worked very different from the way it did work. I wasn't the only one. My brother had my back. We had a very different idea how the game should be played. I don't remember what it was we were arguing over, but you know how kids are. They get it in their head that a game works a certain way, and then that's either the way it's going to be or not. It kind of like Monopoly. I'm a big fan of Monopoly. My family would play Monopoly sometimes, not during Thanksgiving. That was more a New Year's Eve game for us. Traditionally, we'd play Monopoly until it struck midnight and it was the new year. Don't know what started that tradition. I probably started it because I just freaking loved Monopoly. I loved playing it for hours. But you know how Monopoly goes. There's always those house rules in Monopoly about what you can and can't do and what free parking does or doesn't do. You know how it goes when you make up rules to a board game, and so long as everybody's in on it and everyone agrees, and that's the way it goes. So yeah, a lot of nostalgia there with just I guess I've always had a very gaming family, even if it wasn't video gaming. There was a lot of board gaming, and even with the older folks with Yahtzees and Unos and like the simpler, easier to play games, it was always gaming. It wasn't always just the kids have to go run around playing tag or something. We could play games with each other or even with the adults, and I think that is where perhaps my gaming comes from, is the fact that weirdly enough, for some reason, it was encouraged by my family on some level, inadvertently. I don't think anyone was trying to get me into gaming intentionally. It's just that that's kind of what we did. And I don't know. I feel like maybe that's a unique experience to many people who I hear talk about games that... I don't know, that some people talk about being bullied for playing games or being made fun of for playing games or for being a nerd or a geek or a loser or an outcast for playing games. And I didn't grow up with that experience. I grew up in a very gaming, welcoming environment where even if family members didn't understand the video game aspect of it necessarily, were at least interested in it. Like, oh, this is fun to watch even if I don't get it. No one was... ridiculed for that. No one was put down for that. That wasn't seen as a lesser than thing to do. which I guess fast forward to eventually when I would be in school, some of my earlier school memories, I didn't talk about games much with folks, but those who I did, I never had an issue with. I don't remember ever being made fun of for games. I don't remember ever being ridiculed for games. I don't know that I talked about it all that much. I was a kid that kind of kept to himself anyway, just because, I don't know, I just did. I didn't feel pushed away by anybody. I was just a kid that liked to keep to himself. But some of my earliest friends were based on making that gaming connection, like, oh, you play games too? Have you played the newest Ratchet and Clank, or that kind of thing? And yeah, I just had a very positive gaming experience growing up that, I don't know, it's just kind of always been there. And I know that wasn't everybody's experience, but that was mine. I'd love to hear from any of you that would like to partake in sharing your experiences. I'd love to hear from you. Follow me on Twitter at Weston Hasty. You can hit me up. Just send me an just tweet me or use the hashtag Hasty Podcast, and I will see it, and we can use these tweets as possible material for future episodes. Material is not the word I was looking for, but I lost it there right at the end. But this has been a Hasty Podcast. I'm all out of time, so I'm going to stop it right there. If you've enjoyed this podcast, be sure to follow and or like and or subscribe and or whatever it is you can do on your preferred listening platform that you're listening to this podcast on. Do the things. And until next time, wash your hands, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time. I'm out of here. Bye.